Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to wait until 4 p.m. and then get started. So feel free to introduce yourselves on the chat. Yeah, just one more minute. Right, we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's discussion. Welcome to our session, ESG and Evolution of the Workplace. We have 3 expert speakers today with a Q&A session at the end for your chance to challenge our speakers. So we're thrilled to be joined today by our 3 speakers. Our first presenter today will be Caroline Williams, co-founder at Junee. Caroline will be presenting on Junee's work helping offices reduce food and beverage packaging waste in the workplace. They'll share why reuse is the new recycling and how their reusable container service helps offices transition from single use to reuse, providing the packaging, washing and communication support. Maggie Berry, director at Heart of the City, will be speaking about their mission to make social responsibility a core element of business going forward. So this includes support for businesses, working with larger organisations to help their supply chains and supporting businesses with a free toolkit which will be available after the session. Finally, Kate Fenton, project manager at CRP, will be providing new details about our own river freight pilot, taking goods from the Dartford area to North Bank Bid in central London. So please get your questions ready and post them here in Teams. Safinat is moderating the chat, so she will be looking out for those questions. So firstly, if you're new here, CRP delivers environmental, economic and community-focused projects. We support public, private and voluntary organisations to address creatively challenges around air quality, transport, placemaking and well-being. Just a few kind of basics before we begin the session. So ESG is more than ticking boxes. It's about making a difference through business, and these factors are often interlinked. Environmental being conservation of the natural world, social being consideration of people and relationships, and governance meaning the standards for running a company. So there's real appetite for kind of data-driven insights to measure business impact in terms of their tangible actions supporting ESGs. In terms of the E in ESG, at CRP, we've made a commitment in our most recent annual reports and business plan to become climate emergency champions. So we've been working hard to achieve this goal, and some of the practical steps to contribute towards emission reductions include our river freight pilot, which Kate will present on later, and cargo bike schemes in 4 boroughs in London. These have allowed us to continue to work with our partners who have declared a climate emergency. Perfect. So I'm going to hand over to Caroline, who will be speaking specifically about Junee's initiatives and how these can help you with your ESG goals. So over to you, Caroline.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rachel. And hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I, as Rachel mentioned, am one of the co-founders at Junee, and we are a company focusing on helping offices, perhaps like yours or organizations, transition from single-use packaging to reusables. Right. And today, on that kind of topic, going to go through a bit about what we do at Junee and why we think that reuse is actually going to be the new recycling in workplaces and beyond. So I think we all probably already know that single-use packaging and single-use plastics pose a bit of a problem. We've seen Blue Planet and probably face this regularly in our day-to-day, whether it's, you know, in the grocery store aisles. It's really everywhere. It's also part of our coffee habit on the go, for example, or even our takeaway habits that have been growing year over year. But seeing as this is a conversation around ESG and the workplace, I thought we would take a moment to look at our office lunch. So let's say you eat takeaway lunch when you're in the office just 2 times a week, thinking about what that actually looks like from a waste perspective over a year. Well, it really creates quite a bit of rubbish. That would be over 100 containers just from that type of a lunch habit from you alone. And then if we start to look at that on a collective level, first, perhaps as a team, we're looking at over 1,000 single-use items. And beyond that, if let's say you have a London office of closer to that 1,000 marker, we're approaching over 100,000 containers or single-use items that would be consumed just from that lunch on the go habit. But it wasn't really always like this. There was a time before we had our abundantly cheap fossil fuel subsidized plastics and packaging that were ruling our consumption habits and really the convenience culture behind it. It was a time of reuse. So that's what we are focused on here at Junee. We're taking the lessons of the past focused around reuse and the systems that we have available to us at the present to actually build a reusable and greener future. So oftentimes people might ask, why is reuse really the way to tackle takeaways? And we like to take it back to the waste hierarchy. So this might look like some similar version to what you've seen throughout your early education, but thought we would start here to help understand this problem. So where we are today when it comes to takeaway packaging for food and beverage is really largely at this disposal level. We're starting with literally rubbish. But we also have made a little bit of progress in some way up the hierarchy of energy recovery. So it's progress, but it's not really perfect, because if I were to ask you what's the best way to kind of tackle this single-use habit, it's unlikely you would say, let's continue importing a lot of packaging and burn it in our local incineration facility. Not really our first choice option, I would say. And it's also not an emissions-free experience either. So each ton of municipal solid waste incinerated actually does release a near equivalent amount of CO2. So probably we can do better. If we go one notch back up this waste hierarchy, we're at recycling, which for many people might seem like it is a great solution to single-use plastics, for example. We know there's plastics infrastructure for recycling. However, when it comes to food packaging and beverage packaging, a lot of stuff actually isn't recyclable or easily recyclable in existing infrastructure due to mixed materials and food contamination and all those complicated factors. For example, I was at Heathrow recently, and if you look at the bins that they have here, on the far right, this is the rubbish section. They put pictures of food packaging because they do not want it contaminating their other recycling waste streams. So that, I think, is a bit of unlearning that some of us have to do around what actually happens to our food packaging. Similarly, as we start seeing compostable packaging enter the market in a lot higher volumes, there's often confusion that consumers face on what you're actually supposed to do with that packaging item when you're done consuming it. So this, I don't know if many of you probably have had a similar experience as this cartoon man, but it's not always very straightforward. And speaking of compostable packaging, while it could, in theory, there's a lot of benefits behind it, it's not really that silver bullet solution we're looking for either. This is a quote here from DEFRA, and essentially, although industrial compostable plastic packaging is an appealing alternative, the general waste management infrastructure to manage it is not yet fit for purpose. So compostables, unfortunately, don't seem to be our most viable answer either. Now, if we skip to the top of the waste hierarchy, we have prevention and reduction, which are great goals to strive towards. However, that convenience habit that we all have, we're probably not all going to revert back to packing our own lunch or always brewing our own coffee, bringing our own mugs, etc. So from a prevention and reduction perspective, it's a bit unrealistic and has limited scale with the current tools that most of us are familiar with today, which brings us to reuse. So reuse is what we believe to be the most scalable and promising solution to have the greatest impact for the packaging market when it comes to most food and beverage packaging, specifically in the takeaway segment. So to give you a sense of what that means, not just from a waste reduction perspective, there's a really big carbon impact that can come along with that as well. So at Junee, we provide this reuse ecosystem, and using Junee one time relative to using a compostable packaging alternative one time actually, on an overall view basis, creates 50 times less carbon emissions than that compostable packaging item. So very interesting and great opportunity to look for as we look not just at anything in the real circular economy about keeping things in use for as long as possible. So again, bringing it back to this workplace, what does this actually mean for workplaces? Well, we've identified there's a big problem of 11 billion pieces of single-use packaging just from lunch on the go, just in the UK. And if you go across, once you bring in coffee and many other categories, this grows even larger. We also have some big expectations when it comes to what employees are expecting. So 4 in 5 people today don't think that their company is doing enough on the topic of sustainability. But there's actually a really great and exciting opportunity specifically in the packaging space and the material space. We see this is a recent survey that was done, and 49% of employees say that eliminating unsustainable materials is, in their view, the most effective way their organizations could improve their impact. So this is 10% higher than some of the other high-ranking categories, including measuring and offsetting carbon emissions overall. So I'd like everyone to take a quick moment to think of your own organizations and whether there might be opportunities for reuse, whether that's through some of the context that I've shared so far or others. The way we usually look at this problem is, are there low-hanging fruit items that are maybe packaged, consumed, and disposed of all in the same larger environment? That could be turned, instead of this linear model, into a circular one where a return component becomes a part of it. Now, this is usually when people start asking a lot of questions about how would I even make this work? So for starters, reusable packaging sounds expensive. Won't people steal stuff? I wouldn't know where to start. I don't have the space, the time, or the facilities to wash all these new dishes. And of course, how do I make sure people actually return that packaging? Well, the good news is that's where Junee comes in. We help organizations like yours look at problem sets and ways that you can transition current single-use packaging items into reusables. So the way that we do that is pretty simple. We have 3 key things that we provide. So first, reusable packaging itself. So there is no supplier hassle that you have to deal with in trying to identify what types of takeaway boxes or cups might be suitable for your current use cases. Second, we provide the washing services. So we are literally doing the dirty work here. We operate quite similar to your waste managers. We collect from your offices, but we do that instead of with some usually pretty emissions-heavy vehicles. We use electric vehicles and cargo bikes, for example, like Pedal Me, as you can see here. We then bring it to our washing facility. So essentially, instead of burying or burning the items that we used to consume, we would be washing those just down the road. So keeping everything within M25 here in London. And finally, we provide a plan. So we know this transition has a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainties that might come with it. So we help answer all these questions so that you don't have to. So as you're starting to think a bit more about what your reuse journey could look like, this is something we found very helpful to put into context. Even though we have this current status quo of single use, really, if we were to ask this problem to ourselves without any context, it would be, which of these seems to make more sense? The journey of one single-use container traveling perhaps nearly 30,000 kilometers in its short-lived life, but very long journey? Or would it be the journey of one reusable container, all contained within a local area and washed and kept within a local ecosystem, bringing local jobs and supporting a local economy? So to give you a little bit of context of the types of folks that we're working with at the moment, we've very much got our start focusing on workplaces and that workday lunch element, as I've kind of highlighted throughout this conversation. And you can see a handful of our partners here. So from startups to co-working spaces to scale-ups, all the way through to professional services firms. We also have expanded into food delivery, so working with Feeder, who is a B2B food delivery provider, to make sure that delivery meals for teams can come waste-free. And we are about to start a big project with Mercado Metropolitano, so to help them transition to reuse. So going beyond that workplace and looking at these other venues where there's a lot of opportunity to eliminate single-use packaging. So would love to be able to help anyone out there in the audience who might be thinking about ways that we can support you in your reuse journey. And with that, I will just leave you with one final thought. Isn't it crazy we used to throw things away after just one use? So we hope we'll be saying this a lot sooner than 2050, but if you want to make this a reality sooner, please do get in touch. You can see contact info here, and there's also been some more info on the additional services that we provide being shared in the chat. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Caroline. I feel like I learned a lot there. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. So yeah, please definitely put those in the chat so we can answer them at the end. Thank you so much. And I will move on now to introduce Maggie Berry. So yeah, over to you, Maggie, to hear all about Heart of City's responsible business initiatives.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. That was a great presentation. And I absolutely agree. When we look back, it's like, I will not believe that we use just plastics once. It's just, it is quite crazy. So great. Thank you very much for sharing. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maggie Berry. I am the director at Heart of the City, and I'm going to chat a little bit about the support that we provide to small and medium-sized enterprises around, well, responsible business, ESG, CSR, sustainability, whatever is the label that different organisations are looking at. But just by way of background, we're an organisation that is absolutely focused on helping small and medium-sized businesses in the UK to run their businesses well. Our tagline is that we believe every business can be a force for good. I don't know how many of you on the call today will have heard of us, but we have our roots very firmly in the City of London. And over the last 20 years, we've helped hundreds and hundreds of businesses to really have a positive impact on people, places, and planet. And the reason why we're really interested in SMEs, and again, some of you might be SMEs or from larger businesses, but you know, SMEs, they are the backbone of the UK economy. They represent the biggest proportion of businesses. They account for over 60% of employment and about 50% of private sector turnover. And although it doesn't always feel like that, you know, in a big city, that is the scenario, and we really want to be able to provide support for businesses so they can be the really best suppliers, whether that is to big business, to consumers that you and I might buy individually, but that they're on the front foot around this topic connected to ESG. We run 2 core programmes. These slides will be shared afterwards, so you will be able to click on the links and find out more about each one. I'm going to give you a bit of information about them this afternoon. We run a core one all around responsible business generally, and then we run also a deep dive around net zero. So I'm going to do a bit of a whistle-stop tour through both of these programmes. So our responsible business programme, we call it Foundations for Responsible Business. It's absolutely aimed at small businesses that really maybe haven't started on this journey or haven't done very much yet, or would like a framework that will help them pull everything together. And we cover these 4 areas: the actual approach that a business takes, a focus on people, a focus on environment, and a focus on community. The programme that we run, if your business is based in a certain London borough listed on the screen, so in Camden, Hackney, Islington, Lambeth or Southwark, we have fully funded places on this programme that your business can take advantage of. So I know some of the links have gone in the chat, please do have a look. And if you're based in other boroughs, we have lots of businesses who self-fund, or we also talk to large corporates who sometimes fund their suppliers through the programme. So think about the different approaches that you might be able to take to access some of the support here. And just to give a sense, I know this is a really busy slide, but our programme, it almost runs on a kind of a 12-month rolling basis, and businesses can join in at any point. They can also drop in and drop out and pick up content as they're going along. But we provide content in different ways, from workshops, one-on-one sessions, mentoring opportunities, lunch and learns, drop-in sessions, all sorts of different ways for businesses to access this content. And it's delivered through an online training platform that means actually business owners or whoever's competing in the program can participate at a time that best suits them, because we absolutely know how busy life is for any small business. So if that is 10 o'clock on a Tuesday, brilliant. If it's Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock and they've got a couple of hours, they can also log in and access all of the content then. So as I say, it's all really practical, aimed for SMEs, with most likely businesses who probably aren't going to have a full-time responsible business manager, and they can access all this training and support. And so for our SMEs, it's really about, I'm a firm believer, I've worked with SMEs for many years, lots of businesses are doing really great stuff, but they haven't necessarily thought about how they articulate it or how they talk about it or how they share these case studies with either potential clients, wider business and customers. And so really being part of a community of other businesses and sharing ideas is a really key part of being part of Heart of the City. There's also all the different parts around how you leverage this to raise the profile of your business with clients, but also attracting staff and having your employees being really engaged with your business. And I've got a couple of examples coming up. You can read the rest of the slides. I'm not actually going to read each of the bullet points. Bottom line is, for us, we believe responsible business is a core part of any business, large or small, and how they are run. And we want to reach and support as many SMEs as possible. This slide is also really busy, but as promised, they will be shared as a PDF. But they're just some examples of some SMEs that we've worked with and some of the programs that they've undertaken. I'm just going to pull out a couple. Hold on, I'm just going to pull out a couple. And so for We Agile, one of the things that I really like, being a charity ourselves, during the pandemic, they offered what they called a Pay It Forward initiative, whereby they provided their experts in website and digital, and they offered to develop websites for charities on a pro bono basis, and also did some free social media webinars with charities, which I think is just brilliant. And then for Red Ant, their whole program, which I love, is called Philanthropy. And I'm going to pick out the one that kind of resonates most with me, is where they spend time with the elderly in their local area, and go out and visit. And Red Ant do lots of different activities and they pull it all together, but they also really engage with their team to understand what the team want to do and how they might like to engage further around this responsible business topic. So it really is a brilliant way to run a business in terms of that external and that internal engagement. So I just wanted to share some of those. And then I'm going to move now to climate action. Obviously, this is a really important topic, right now. It's not going to be going anywhere, even though the economic situation is really challenging. And I know for a lot of small businesses, it's like, gosh, it's one extra thing that I need to look at. But really, the role that SMEs play in this is huge, because they will be making up the scope 3 for a lot of larger businesses. And we really want, I said earlier, really want them to be on the front foot with being able to know how they can measure the carbon footprint, understand the contribution they're making, and really help how they're going to embed decarbonisation plans into their businesses. And the stat there, this is from a recent British Business Bank survey, 76% of SMEs, small businesses, have yet to really start any comprehensive decarbonisation strategies, and we're absolutely here to try and help them. And one of the pieces that we're playing at the moment is with the City of London Corporation. They have a whole climate action strategy. I hope some of that might be aware of some of that, but they want to support the Square Mile to get to net zero by 2040. And Heart of the City is the delivery partner for the SME workstream, because we want to make sure that SMEs in the Square Mile are contributing to these net zero goals and really galvanising that collective action from all the small businesses to really help support the bigger goals around net zero. So again, I'm going to give a quick whistle stop of the work around climate action. So it's a 4-module program. That kind of climate change 101. Are we all talking the same language? Because there's lots of terminology that's used. Module 2 is all around building the business case. It's bringing your business with you and making sure that everybody's aligned. Module 3 is all about doing that first carbon footprint, basically getting all your ducks in a row, well, not ducks, probably data, and where you're going to get all the data that you need to do your first carbon footprint measurement. And then I have to say, for me, the final module, which I think is really important, is really about how you take all of this and put it in and embed it into your business as usual. Businesses that are based in or substantially operating in the Square Mile can access free training, a free training program. But we also have a free climate action toolkit that any business can access. So if this is something that you're looking at, please have a look at the toolkit. It's absolutely designed for SMEs. So if you're a larger business with SMEs in your supply chain, please share this with them. And if you're a smaller business yourself, please check it out and please ask us questions. There's lots and lots of great support and advice in that toolkit. And then just to share another way that we're supporting business, this is an example of how we've created a bespoke programme for a larger business to support their SME supply chain. So Grosvenor have said that they are not going to award any new contracts after 2023 to suppliers if they have not set a science-based target. They're quite big contracts, probably over, I think it's over £1 million. But what they're saying is if you've not got a science-based target, we won't award new contracts. But they also recognise that they've got lots of brilliant SMEs that they work with who they really want to keep working with. And so they have vested in a net zero mentoring programme that Heart of the City is delivering with them, based on the climate work that we've done, based on the Climate Action Toolkit, but really helping these suppliers, this cohort, get to the point by the end of the year that they will have set a science-based target, which will be helpful for their business generally, for the work they do with Grosvenor, but most likely for other clients that they work with as well. So it's just to spark some ideas for people around the way and the support that Heart of the City can provide. And then this is really just a final piece around the support that we provide. So whether you're an SME directly, please check out whether any of the funded places that we have available could be interesting for your business. We can run events and webinars. So if you're a larger business and you're interested in providing some support for SMEs either in your community or your supply chain, please come and have a chat. And we can look at all sorts of bespoke activity as well. But please have a look at the website. We've also got 3 upcoming events. I think the next one is early September. It's about digital emissions specifically. We've also got one coming up about greenwashing, lots of different insight and support. I am just on time, so I think my final slide are my contact details. So if you would like to find out more, please get in touch, have a look at the website, and I'll look forward to the questions during the Q&A afterwards.
Brilliant, thank you, Maggie. Yeah, I know there's lots of SMEs on the call, as well as kind of bids and local authorities who operate with lots of SMEs, obviously. So lots of useful resources.
Please check them out.
Found extremely useful, thank you. So I will now pass on to Kate Fenton, and Kate will be speaking about CRP's work in the field and our river freight pilot. So over to you, Kate.
Thank you, Rachel. Hello, everyone. So thank you for joining in with this CRP session, and huge thanks to Maggie and Caroline for sharing their insights with us today. Really, really interesting. Great to hear about what's going on. Anyway, so my name is Kate Fenton and I'm a project manager at CRP. I've managed all of the recent phases of CRP's successful Clean Air Villages projects, and I'm also managing our new Clean Air Freight project that's funded by Impact on Urban Health. So all of these projects are business facing and offer opportunities for businesses to ramp up aspects of their ESG performance, which we have been talking about. So CRP's most recent phase of Clean Air Villages was funded by Central Government Department DEFRA and was all about tackling freight solutions in order to clean up London's air. CRP looked at 5 different aspects of freight, how they interlinked and what clean air solutions they could bring. These 5 aspects were consolidation, distribution, mode, technology and policy. So towards the end of the Clean Air Villages project, we realised the untapped potential of the River Thames for moving freight sustainably into London. So that is what CRP's next DEFRA funded programme is focusing on. So via Clean Air Logistics for London, or CALL, so more information can be found on both of these projects. The links will be posted in the chat. Thank you very much, Safinat. So why river freight? River freight can create a significant reduction in population air pollution exposure by removing freight from polluting road transport modes. And a predicted increase in parcels puts pressure on our road network, and there's a lack of light freight being moved by the river. So this means an opportunity. So how did we do this? So we set out to disseminate knowledge about the potential for river freight, and we've been working really closely with the Port of London Authority, the PLA, to produce a guidance document all about river freight. This document is also going to be in the chat function just now. So we used this and also a flyer to target businesses to promote river freight. We promoted it across our networks, we discussed river freight at events, and we were aiming to find a partner to deliver a river freight pilot with. Extensive promotion took place, and particularly in Dartford as well, so due to its strong location by the river and with its extensive and existing logistics companies in the area. Getting the river freight pilot going was a true partnership effort. So we met Complete, well, we knew Complete anyway as a business that's worked with us as part of Clean Air Villages, but we met them towards the end of last year. And they were a business that worked with a number of suppliers to consolidate stationary goods to bring them into London. And Complete agreed to work with CRP on a river freight pilot. which was very exciting. So we introduced Complete to the PLA for preliminary conversations about river operations. In the meantime, we were discussing with North Bank Business Improvement District about river freight in the context of the Clean Air Villages project. And it came up about Woods Quay, this privately owned new quay that was in their area, just near Somerset House on Embankment. So it had come up as a potential location for deliveries. So meanwhile, Complete, they brought in iRecycle, who are waste collectors, Mayflower and Antalis into the conversation. So CRP set up fortnightly steering group meetings to steer the pilot. They started towards the end of this year, kind of January, February time. So site visits took place in order to understand the factors limiting river freight movements, in particular landside integration issues. So in terms of the site visits, we were looking at the overall suitability of the space and its viability for use for the pilot, how and where we might be unloading from vehicles and then loading onto the vessel that would be used, what kind of devices or contraptions would be best suited to transport the goods. So roll cages, all kinds of different things we looked at. And we also looked at whether there were any restrictions in terms of access, timings. We looked at unloading and loading at the site due to the tide. I say we, the PLA, were leading on this. And a look at the storage facility potential on the site, as well as parking and EV charging potential, access times and restrictions, health and safety issues. So the site visits were really, really intrinsic in terms of making a decision on where to launch from. So the steering group made the following key decisions to establish the route for the pilot. And you can see from this lovely little graphic that we've got here, kind of visually how it came about. So Dartford International Ferry Terminal, which you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, or DIFT as we call it, that was chosen as a pickup location for Complete and Antalis office supplies. And a Woolwich pier, which you can see Woolwich is highlighted in the middle there, that was required for a pickup of Mayflower's cleaning supplies. And Woolwich Ferry, which is owned by TfL, was chosen. So Woods Quay, which is on the left-hand side, you can see that's highlighted there as well on the map. So Woods Quay was a new quay owned by Silverfleet, as mentioned before. And with North Bank Bid being keen to be part of the pilot, Woods Quay was the ideal location to unload these goods. And the last mile of the journey would be completed by zero-emission cargo bike or trike. So the steering group agreed to limit the items that could be purchased, and a short list of items was agreed, which covered best sellers and items that we thought might be the most suitable for river freight. So the steering group then agreed to operate 1 day per week over 6 weeks, with an additional soft launch week that we could test out the process. So the PLA were working on the timings and looking at the tidal movements. And we wanted to bring the vessel in as the tide came in, and we wanted the vessel to leave and return back east as the tide went out. So this would reduce journey times and also emissions, which is obviously very important in the context of an air quality freight project. So in terms of considerations, so we knew that it would be challenging to find a supplier to take part in a river freight pilot because there's a lot of unknowns about using the river. Understanding costs, tides, pier ownership, health and safety, and more. It's much more complicated than the road, which logistics companies are just really familiar with using. So even once a business or supplier was found to be interested in river freight, there were challenges in moving this forwards. So this could be due to a business changing its mind, or we might have found it quite difficult to find out about the potential sites for operation. Also, in terms of waste, moving waste by river was found to have more challenges than other industries as well. So in particular, contractual obligations of businesses meant that switching was not always possible. So this also impacted on some larger businesses not being able to be involved in the goods side of the pilot either, because of their contractual commitments. So the number of stakeholders that were involved in making the pilot happen was really high. So this meant that coordinating meetings and moving things forwards was challenging. I'd say that the reason that the pilot got off the ground was because everyone that was involved was really committed and had the energy to want to make it work. Massive team effort it has been, and it's still going. So many of the smaller details to the operation needed refining. So choosing a device for transporting the goods, deciding whether any goods could be stored at any of the piers or quays, understanding the operating hours of the customers receiving the goods, who would physically move the goods from the boat to the cargo bike, Additional challenges were also faced along the way, including a 1-ton propeller was stolen from one of the vessels we were going to use, some emergency welding needed doing at Dartford. You can't make these things up. Anyway, the impact of the tide and therefore the timings of the vessel were also restricted. And so this impacted on the final delivery times to businesses. So there was a whole lot of coordination going on behind the scenes. There was also a lot of communication on journey days taking place. So calling ahead from Dartford to Woolwich, calling ahead from Woolwich to Woods Quay, so that the people on the receiving end knew what time to appear. So CRP is very proud that the River Freight pilot has happened, and it's the first multi-pickup scheme to be delivered along the Thames. Huge thanks to all of those involved. So launch day. It was a huge success, with all project partners seeing the benefits of the pilot with their own eyes. So I just want to quote Russell Hodson, who is Complete CSR Director. He said, "At Complete, our purpose is to make the procurement of business services sustainable, and our mission is to help organisations accelerate their evolution to a consolidated, sustainable procurement process. We are always looking at ways to innovate and collaborate in order to reduce negative environmental impacts, and this looked to be a perfect opportunity to do this. With our network of supply partners and customers, we were able to introduce CRP to businesses that were able to join and support the scheme, all with the aim of seeing if this could become a viable way of delivering goods into and transporting waste out of central London. We're extremely proud to be involved and are looking forward to contributing towards the next steps, as the river is an ideal mode of transporting heavy, bulky items." Thank you for that quote, Russ. So the launch press release was taken up by a number of trade press titles, and there's just a few more photos for you here as well. So the River Freight pilot has been a true public-private sector collaboration. You can see in the middle of that group photo, we had the new leader of Westminster City Council, Councillor Adam Hugg, joined all the project partners on launch day to get things off to a flying start. Goods were safely offloaded from the river and onto cargo bikes for zero emission last mile of delivery to business customers. As you can see there, we are working with Absolutely. So in terms of learnings, the River Freight pilot is still ongoing right now as we speak, so there are 2 more weeks that remain. Once complete, CRP will produce with the partners a full case study and disseminate this widely. So we want to share all the lessons that have been learnt so that it's easier for more River Freight pilots or actual schemes to be set up on a more long-term basis and on even larger scales. The case study will present information on direct cost comparisons between river and road, as well as harmful emissions comparisons. So this will make it easier for businesses to embrace the potential of river freight to make a positive contribution to their operations and their ESG credentials simultaneously. So that's all I'm going to say for now. So I will hand back to our chair, Rachel, to facilitate the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Caroline and Maggie. 3 different presentations, but hopefully all positively impacting businesses. I'm just going to turn the slides, take the slides down, and then if speakers could put their cameras on, perfect. Oops. So we've had a few questions in the chat. I think they've kind of been answered along the way, but Caroline, I might, something I was interested to know is about the feedback you've had from existing clients. So kind of, yeah, what office buildings or businesses have said and how easy it's been to kind of switch over.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to dive into that. So I think when we first started just over a year ago, and we had a very specific way we thought we could solve this problem. But the reality that we've learned over the past year in talking with lots of clients is everyone's use case. There's some use cases that look quite identical, but there's usually a lot of nuances that might be specific to every client. So we've actually developed a whole suite of services around the types of feedback points people had. So one of the main learnings we had is originally we started out with an approach that involved user tech to help check in and check out both as people were borrowing them. Our number one learning has been that actually limits the adoption to a more niche group of people and not really the wider adoption point that you actually want when you're trying to make a impactful change. If we just rely on, the 10% of very eco-conscious people who might be willing to do something that's a bit inconvenient, it's harder to drive that large scale change. So what we've really focused on is trying to make the return points as convenient as possible to minimize loss rates, which convenience ends up being the thing that works just as effectively as we suspected technology might. And overall, our client feedback from, for example, working with canteens who might not have that dishwashing capacity or space to do a full transition, has been very positive on helping them sort through the challenges they might face, minimize those loss rates, and bring that a little bit more certainty to a pretty uncertain feeling process.
Fantastic, thank you. And then I think for Maggie, there's been a question from Rob Edwards. Do you think the businesses are engaging because they're personally committed to the agenda? Is it more about positive image, or does it not really matter what kind of motivations behind the action?
I love that question. Thank you, Rob. And I did talk about when I was sharing it, what I really want to be able to do is to help business to be able to articulate what they're doing. So although it's slightly linked to PR, I think where I was coming from maybe on that is more, I know businesses are doing stuff, but they don't necessarily always know how to tell their story well, and we definitely want to help. But to your question, I think lots of them are. We have many businesses who are like, I don't think I'm doing much. And actually, when they start to think about it, actually they are. They just haven't thought about it in that way to kind of package everything up and think, we do that. And to be fair, for me, when I look at all of these different topics, I personally, I'm like, I don't mind what the motivation is. Let's just do something and let's get started, because the time is now. We need to do stuff now. We can't wait any longer. And what I would love to see is more businesses, especially small businesses, sharing their story and talking about what they're doing so that other businesses can be inspired by that. And one of the programs that we support at Heart of the City is the Lord Mayor's Dragon Awards, which are all around showing impact in business. So this year's awards are just a few weeks away, but please, next year, please all consider, if any of you are doing anything in the space, please consider entering the Lord Mayor's Dragon Awards around really championing and highlighting the work you're doing. So Caroline, I would be looking for your team to be entering that, and I think for the Cross River Partnership, get that the river freight example in there. I think this is such an important part of it, and why events like today are really important is to share those stories, and so for others can go, oh, right, I could take that and do this and do that, and that's definitely what we want to inspire. But yeah, Rob, I love the question, and for me it's whatever, let's just get people off the starting blocks and doing something.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, communication is key. Kate, there's been a question about the fuel that the boats use, but mainly kind of more the impact on air quality, perhaps. So I don't know if you could talk about that in terms of the trial.
Sure, yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, I can see that question. I know that Jack he's actually from Mayflower, part of the River Freight pilot, has replied. So we're working with GPS Marine, who it's their vessel and their team that are actually moving the goods on the river itself, and their vessels use HVO. I can't provide right now an analysis of the data comparing our trial with road. I'm actually working on calculations right at the moment. So we want to compare the journey of the boat, and that includes obviously the van journeys from the warehouses to the piers, and then the onward journey with bike. We want to compare that whole journey with the equivalent of the vans delivering along the roads into London. So that's what I'm working on at the moment, and that will come out as part of the case study that we hope to produce very soon. But I just wanted to also point out that many of you will be aware of the Guy's and St Thomas's Trust and Seva Logistics River Freight trial that was taking place last year. And we worked as part of the Clean Air Villages project with consultants EMSOL to do a study of the emissions. So we actually monitored the two piers involved in that, which was Dartford and Butler's Wharf, and there were also monitoring devices on the vessel. So the monitoring took place over 4 months from October last year to January 2022. And we've got a report that we published a few months ago. So that's all about the emissions. I think it was Iona asking questions about that. So I can share that with you afterwards. It's a really detailed report about the fuel, and it shows you the impact on emissions, and even through different parts of the river, and what happens to emissions when the boat goes around a corner, and the difference when it's idling at a pier, and the difference between the pier out in Kent versus central London. Really interesting report. So that might be worth a look while you wait to get the results of our own emissions analysis of the current pilot. So hope that answers the question.
And then just to add on to that really quickly, Naomi said about towards e-boats, and if there's any plan for that. And yeah, I don't know if you have any info on that we could share, or.
I mean, we'd love to be using e-boats in terms of trials, but I think that it's emerging technology, and I think that there's a lot of research going into hydrogen and different types of fuel for the river. That is obviously what we're working towards. And if you imagine that at the moment we're promoting river freight and want to encourage that, the hope is that in tandem, the work towards greener and cleaner fuels takes place at the same time, so that by the time river freight is really seeing a surge, hopefully the fuel that's being used on these boats will be much more clean. That would be the aim, or I would hope.
Okay, we've got 1 minute. Caroline, just there's been some questions about hospitals and charities using Junee boxes, and Andrea said she's kind of a trustee with a charity in Hackney and Islington. So yeah, I wonder if you partner with them too, or if it's just more business focused.
So far, it's been mostly workplace and business focused, but we are absolutely looking to expand beyond that community. So to the degree to which there's charities or hospitals, that would be connections we would love to make.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I've seen you put that in the chat as well. And yeah, we'll circulate any contact details and things. Brilliant. Thanks so much for answering those questions. I'll just put the slides back because I am just going to point you to our next event, which is a hybrid event. So there's online and in person spaces with Good Parks for London, and it's their report launch on the 29th of September. We'll be hearing from GL Han and a top performing London Borough. So there's a link in the chat there from Safina. But thank you to all our three presenters and for all your really amazing questions and lots of links and resources. So I will follow up with anything of use tomorrow. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.